Hello and assalamualaikum everyone. Welcome to another part of our lesson 4, which is on the basics of nomenclature. Today we will be doing another homologous series, which is haloalkanes. Now, in order to just to give you a heads up, what a haloalkane is, a haloalkane is basically this is an alkane, all right, but it has a halogen attached with a carbon. So if I were to draw this out, this is basically CHH. This is like, look at this. This is like methane. But if I replace one of the hydrogens with a halogen, let's say bromine, now this thing right here is a haloalkane because I can see that a halogen is directly attached with a carbon. So, in other words, what we see is a bond between a carbon and a halogen, which we will generally represent as an X. This X definitely can be anything such as iodine, bromine, chlorine, or stuff like that. Now, the rules remain the same. I will not be going over them because we have already done almost 2 to 3 videos on these rules. We will continue and focus on the more specific part, which is this right over here. So, if you see a CX bond where X is Cl, which is basically chlorine, bromine, fluorine, or iodine, then we say that we're talking about haloalkanes. Now, the suffix in this game remains ane because it's an alkane at the end of the day. So, the suffix is ane. However, the prefix is slightly different, and I wouldn't actually say prefix. I would just say that there is, some part that we need to add before we can name the object, or not the object, actually name the molecule. But for now, I hope that you already have these names in mind. So, bromo, chloro, bromo, chloro, and then fluoro or iodo. Now, I know these sound ridiculous for now, but I will come to the significance of these. I hope you know bromo will somehow be referring to bromine. Chloro will be referring to chlorine. Fluoro will be representing to representing fluorine, and iodo will be representing iodine. And now in a minute, I'll show you what I mean by this. These will come before our names, and then we will basically give the name to our molecule. And over here, right over here, we'll add another part. Now, although it sounds out of space right now, let me actually let's do some examples, and then it'll get clarified. But keep this thing again in mind, that the carbon with which the X or the halogen is attached, it will be given the highest priority. So we will assign the lowest possible number, जितना हम कम number assign कर सकते हैं a carbon को which is attached with a halogen, we will try to do that. So let's look at some examples. So over here I can see CH3I. All right, now let's just like name the alkane part first, and then we'll concern ourselves with this iodine right over here. So as far as the name is concerned, I see that there is only one carbon, right? So it is going to be meth. Now after that, I can see we have I can see it's a haloalkane, and we have already discussed the suffix remains ane, and so this is methane. Now once we're done doing that, as I said, you will name it as it is, as you will name an alkane. You will end it with the suffix of ane, but the only difference is what comes before. So what do we insert before the name? This will tell us what haloalkane are we talking about. Now right now, this is simply, it is referring to methane, which is like CH4. All right, now in order to tell any person who reads this name that this has an iodine attached rather than a halogen, it has iodine attached rather than a hydrogen over here with that carbon, what we do is, now you can see it's iodine, right? You're gonna write iodo, and you're gonna let that be. Now in this case, because there's only one carbon, there's no need to number it or anything, and so you can just call this as iodo methane. So I hope that makes sense. Iodo methane. Now let's come below and let me actually do another example with you guys. So I can see there is a 2 carbon chain. All right, so I can say that this will have the suffix of it will have the suffix of eth, and the prefix eth. I don't know why I'm pronouncing so many things today, right? So first we decide our prefix, that is eth. The second thing is the suffix, and the suffix remains "ane" as we have already discussed. So this is ethane. However, ethane is specifically this, right? And we want to tell the reader who reads this name that this has a bromine attached to a carbon as well. And so in order to indicate that, we add a bromo at the start of this name, bromoethane. Now in this case, yes, we have two carbons attached, so if I were to number them, I will give this the highest priority, 1, and give this 2. Now in this case, you don't really need to number, you do not really need to mention that this is 1 bromoethane or anything of that sort. The reason being that, for example, let's just forget about br over here. Imagine there's a 3 here, and let's attach a br here and put a 2 here. Now, what will you actually name it now? Same goes here. I can still number this 1 and 2, and so clearly we're still talking about 1 bromoethane. And in the case that we already have, right, which is right over here, we still have 1 bromoethane. So my point is that it doesn't really makes sense to number this molecule, because bromine, whether it is on this carbon or on this carbon, we will still, we can give that carbon number 1, and so it will still remain 1 bromoethane regardless, so it will still be 1 bromoethane. And that's why we don't really actually say 1 bromoethane. It's understood, because in ethane, in either case, it will be 1 bromoethane, whether it is bromine is attached here or bromine is attached here. So I hope that makes sense. All right, let's come to the third case now. This is like a longer chain now. So in this case, I have the first, the second, the third, and the fourth, and the fifth carbon. So we have like 5 carbons in our longest carbon chain. And that tells me to add pent as my prefix. Now, because we know that it is a haloalkane because of the CCl bond, I know that I'm going to add ane at the end. So this is pentane. However, I need to tell the user, because, pentane is like C5H12. So I need to tell the person who reads this name that I have a Cl attached as well. And where is this Cl exactly attached? Let's number the carbons. I will start from this side, so this carbon gets the lowest possible number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And what I will now say is that this right here is 2 chloro. Now chloro is telling the I don't know why I keep saying the user, maybe because of CS, but yeah, this is chloro, all right, because chlorine is attached, and 2 is basically telling that it is attached with a second carbon in this entire carbon chain. And so the name is 2-chloropentane. There's one thing that I always like to tell people who are doing nomenclature, that your naming skills, or the actual idea of naming anything, is so that if you are only allowed to see this thing right over here, if you're only given 2-chloropentane, you can look at it and you know exactly what you're talking about. Your naming should be descriptive enough. It should give enough details to the person who is reading this name, so that they have an exact idea about what kind of a molecule are we talking about. The person knows it is a pentane, so we are talking about basically C5s, and the person knows it's a haloalkane, so all of the bonds are CH except for this one right here. We have 1 chlorine attached as well, but where is that chlorine attached? It is going to be attached to the second carbon in this chain. And so your naming skills should be descriptive enough for the user to actually judge all of this, or be able to create an image in their head with the name. Okay, now let's move on. Let's try to do this one. Now, this is kind of interesting, right? Because I see, let's make this as the longest carbon chain. This is one possibility. Another possibility is to make this as the longest carbon chain, and another possibility is to make this as the longest carbon chain. So in either case, you can clearly see that we are getting almost 3 carbons in this chain. I'll just go with this in case you find it confusing. So we have 3 carbons in the chain, so this will give me the prefix of prop. And now I know that it is a haloalkane because of the Ci bond, and so it's going to end with ane, but I also need to tell the person or who is reading this name what kind of haloalkane is attached, and we do that by naming it as iodopropane. Now where is this iodine attached? This iodine is attached, if we number them, it is attached to 1, 2, 3. So it is attached to the second carbon. So this is 2-iodopropane. Now, there's also one more thing that you need to realize over here, and that is that we also have this methyl group attached. Because we couldn't include this group in our longest carbon chain, we also need to mention this. This is a methyl group which is also attached to the second carbon, and so you should you should tell the user that, I don't know why I keep saying the user. Let's forget about that. But you need to tell the person about this. And so the way that we do it is to also say to methyl to iodo-propane. So you need to add this part, 2-methyl 2-iodo-propane. Now, I hope this is like making sense. This was a particularly difficult example which I included because I want to like also make you familiar as we go along with molecules which will have more than one type of group attached. So let's say you have a halogen here, but you also have an alkyl group here. And in most of the organic molecules that exist in nature, they're going to be like 5 and 10 and even more than that functional groups involved. And so when the naming comes over here, over there, it's going to get like quite complicated. And although you won't be expected to name something as complicated, but you should have an idea about how it is done. So similar is the case with this last example that we're about to do. In this case, I can see there's 1, 2, 3, and 4 carbon in the longest carbon chain. But I also see a double bond, and I also see a haloalkane involved. Or you can say I see a haloalkane functional group, and I also see a alkene functional group. And so I need to consider both of these. So first, let me name the carbon chain. So it's going to be bute because there are 4 carbons involved. Now, I would have said this is butane if there was no double bond over here, right? But as I can see a double bond, I really need to mention it as well. And so what I will do is, now also make sure that you can number this as you want. So this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now even if you go in this way, 1, 2, 3, and 4, the problem with that is that this carbon, yes, gets number 2. You could say the carbon which is involved in the double bond will get number 2 in either of these numberings. But in the numbering below, you are also giving preference to this carbon which has bromine attached. So I think it would be more suitable to decide on this lower numbering rather than the above one, because this gives the lower number to each of the carbons which are having these functional groups attached. And so let me first deal with the double bond. I have a bute, all right, and I know I need to mention my position of the double bond. So that is butene, right? If this had been like CH2, this was butene, and we would have ended our name right over here. But we also have bromine attached, and because we have bromine attached, we also need to mention this. And so I'm gonna write bromobutene. Now, do I really need to mention one bromobutene? Well, I don't know. I don't think so, and I mean, you don't have to, because in this case, the bromine, when we just say bromobutene, whenever you like name a functional group but you don't mention a number next to it, that automatically means that it is attached with the first carbon. But if you do say 1 bromobutene, this will definitely not be wrong. So you can do as you wish. You can write the number if you want, but if you don't want to, you don't really need to. So as you can see, this is our molecule's name, which has in this case and in this case we had 2 functional, well, this is not exactly a functional group, but yeah, you can clearly see when you have 2 different groups attached, this is how you can actually name them. There's one important thing that I would like you to pick on if you haven't already from these videos, and that is that when you are involving a number, you always include this dash, all right? You should and you must include a dash when you want to separate a number from a name. More like when you want to separate the numbers from the alphabets, we add a dash in the middle, and it's important. You'll notice I've done it in all of these cases, right? And that's important to do. Numbers and alphabets are separated with these dashes. And apart from that, if you ever have to separate numbers from one another, so for example 2 and you want to do something like dichloro, I'm coming to this, so don't worry, 2,2-dichloro, let's say propane. Now in this case, you can clearly see that I have separated out the 2 or the numbers from one another using this comma, and if you want you can add a dash here, all right? So 2,2-dichloropropane. So numbers are separated with commas, and numbers with alphabets are separated with dashes. Now, in case you're wondering what exactly is this, this is something that we will do in the next part of our video, which will extensively discuss those type of haloalkanes which have two haloalkanes, or sorry, two halogens involved. So keep waiting for that part, because it's going to come up very very soon. And I hope that the very simplistic forms of naming haloalkanes have been made very clear to you. I'll see you next time. Huda Hafiz.